Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this Wednesday morning. I'm Connor Cook, AWFC Board Member, composer, um, and many other things. But for now, let's stick with that. And I am excited to present standing out on applications. I've never done that before. That was dorky. But standing out on applications.
I
I want to talk to you all about how to do applications because they're hard. So I reached out to people who I know have a lot of experience with this and are also incredibly amazing. And so I'm just gonna let everyone introduce themselves a little bit because reading bios tends to be wordy and not good. So how about we start with you, Miriam?
Okay. Hi, I'm Miriam Cutler, and I've been a composer for about 35 years. Wasn't much involved in any applications until I've gotten into more into teaching and just public speaking and stuff and being asked to be on juries a lot. So I have my own things that I look for, and I'll share those with everyone today. So that's about that.
Great, thank you. Peter, how about you go next?
Hey everybody, Peter Golub here. Uh, I'm a composer and for 20 years, ran the Sundance Film Music Program and I teach at USC and UCLA. And I've been on both sides of this, uh, applying for things over the years and more recently adjudicating. So I have my own perspective on it and uh, I look forward to chatting.
Thank you. Zoe?
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm a composer and I'm a board member at AWFC. And my jurying history is really limited to jurying for AWFC stuff, but it completely changed my perspective on how I'm going to apply for stuff in the future. So I really wanted to share that and how it changed for me from being like applicant to juror. What a weird word.
Thank you. Thank you all. The reason I picked the three of you is because I wanted some different takes on different sorts of programs. Having done both VIFF CFA and Sundance Labs, I feel like I applied with the same earnestness, but I do think they are very different application processes. Everything's a different application process. And I also have been a jury member too for a bunch of things. And I really take my time with it as a juror. It is a hard word. And I try to really sit with it instead of just like kind of analytically going through. So I'm curious what y'all think about your, my first question is gut reaction versus sort of thinking through someone's application. How do y'all think that happens? Like, are you more of a sitting with the applications and kind of going deep with them, or kind of more like gut instinct first? I think there's value in both. And you
Well,
can just jump in.
okay. I know Peter's been doing it for a lot longer than I have, but I think I've kind of come to this conclusion that, how can I say this? I think that a creative people resonate with each other, and people that truly demonstrate some sort of special quality. When you're a person who kind of lives in that world and you can recognize it in others. And I think that for me, I'm listening to the music and seeing what I hear in it, but I'm also seeing in what perspective they give of who they are, like how they present themselves. You know, for my workshops, I'm looking for people who are really interested in musical storytelling. And so I'm looking very specifically for not just being a good songwriter or composer or musician. I'm looking for someone who has that extra interest and affinity for, really getting deep into stories and really embracing the collaborative arts. So when I was in bands, I was really collaborative, even if they were my bands, because I was looking for musicians that wanted to jam with me. And I've come to believe that we're kind of, as a composer that works with filmmakers, I'm inviting them to a jam session and seeing how they respond, you know. And so I'm looking at these composers that I'm assessing and seeing, are they people who want to come to the jam session in a joyful way, you know, and really have a good time with it, and also work very, very hard. So I mean, that's just kind of I think that's just kind of a simplistic way of saying what I'm looking for. Peter?
I don't, oh,
Go ahead, Zoe.
Yeah,
well, I was
so
gonna say, oh, that Zoom. I was just gonna say, I think it also depends, like Connor, because you said gut reaction versus like methodical thinking, basically. I think probably it depends on each application too, and how the jury has set out how they're looking and jurying. So I know, like for L-Acoustics, we had thought really hard about what the opportunity was and what like specific skill sets people needed to really succeed in it. So we put those down to paper and had like 1 to 10 versus on this it's basically a rubric, 1 to 10 on this area of stuff, 1 to 10 on this, so we could really make sure people were the right fit for that specific opportunity. So I think it also depends maybe on what the program is. Just my way of saying that.
Definitely.
so I'll give you my take on this. Of course, different institutions and different programs have their own goals, so you have to be mindful of that. But I think my biggest advice would be don't try to second guess what you think people want to hear. Put your strongest stuff out there, the stuff that you really connect with, that really demonstrates you as an artist, and and you know, don't try to guess what people want to hear, because it's very you make one makes bad decisions when doing that, because you might not put your best stuff forward thinking that, oh, they want to hear this. So I really think you have to put the stuff out there. I'm talking about the selection of music. Put it out there that best demonstrates the stuff that you feel really strong about, that you really love. Um, and also, no matter what people say, the production element is key. Like, you can't put stuff out there that doesn't sound good, even like, oh, this is a great idea. I love this piece, but I recorded it before I had good samples, or I didn't have a good live performance. It has to sound good, because people listening to a lot of, you have to realize someone listening is gonna, they might have heard 10 applications in one sitting, and then they're going to come back and do 10 more, then they're going to come back and do 10 more. So it has to have a personality. I think it has to have your personality, um, and it has to sound good. Um, um, Maybe that's it for now. More stuff will occur, but I also think a little personality also with the written materials is helpful. That it not just be cookie cutter, uh, something that jumps out at people because it's either fun or interesting, or it's you. It's you're an artist. You're applying for these things, and uh, you want to. It's like meeting a group of people you don't know. You have to kind of put your best foot forward as far as being true to yourself.
Yeah, I think what Peter just said is really hits on it. Being authentic, not trying to put some kind of character out there, but actually being authentic, because I think anyone with experience, can listen to music and hear when somebody's kind of, I don't know, but they're not really, there's just not a lot of content, and the same with the application form. Usually I would think that most programs, I know we do in the programs I'm involved with, we have questions that are kind of direct, that kind of are created with the idea of giving you the opportunity to show us the criteria we care about, So we ask those kind of questions, but sometimes there won't be that kind of leading in the questions. And so you have to be able to anticipate that on your own. What matters to me? Why do I really want to be in this program? Is it just to meet people, or is it to network in a serious way, or is it to actually learn something or contribute also to the group that I'm part of? I think that if you come at it in a really honest, authentic way, it really does come through. I mean, I can't speak for every program, but I think that maybe the way to put it is to say that if you're your authentic self, then you will probably resonate with the programs you're interested in, and maybe don't apply for just everything, apply for things that you really are interested in.
I
Yeah,
like to add
Miriam,
one.
I have to tell you the VIFF questions are amazing. They really are. But this is just something I want to briefly say. Is just I was talking to Connor about this earlier, but I would almost rather read a bio that's got typos and like maybe isn't perfectly worded, that's interesting and like creative, and you get to know who that person is as a person, rather than like the most pristine, perfectly worded thing that was definitely generated from Chat GPT. So that's something from me to all of you is
Don't do
please,
it.
dear Lord, don't do it.
Don't do it.
I like to say something about the post-decision part of this is like you apply for something and you don't get it. You have to move on. It's not like when you apply for something, you have this, sometimes you have this idea that my life's going to change if I get this, and it's going to be terrible if I don't get it. And you just have to take a long view and just realize that there were many other people applying. There are the vagaries of the people listening. That it doesn't mean, all it means is you didn't get that thing, period. That's all it means. Um, so I just think that's really important because I've been on panels where there were truly heartbreaking decisions that had to be made where, we took five, but there were like 10 other people that could just as well have done it, and they didn't get in. And it has to do sometimes with the dynamics of the jury. You just don't know. So don't make up a whole story about why you didn't get it if you don't get it, and just chalk it up to experience and move on. Um,
I think there's also value in like continue to apply for stuff even if you don't get it. Like you said, there's could be a million reasons why you didn't get something and it's not worth it to dwell on it. But if you keep applying, even if you're not getting stuff, at least people see the effort. And I think there's a lot of value in that too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, should reapply. Like I remember back in the Sundance Lab days, I mean, when people would come and say, "Oh, I didn't get in," I'd say, just keep applying because you're going to get better every year. And the people, sometimes the jury is of different people every year. Sometimes there's some consistent people who will recognize you. And I think it's in our profession, we keep getting better. Like I still keep getting better after all these years of doing it. And so not just better, but widening my experiences. And so if you just take the attitude of this is be a really great program, I really resonate with it, just keep applying. The other thing is there's diversity issues. And I know in America right now we're kind of really going through something crazy, but sometimes I know in some of the things I'm involved with, we have a mandate to have a certain amount of women or a certain amount of, diversity. So sometimes there's more going into the decision, and you may not know what all the criteria that each program has. So, you can't, I mean, I think it's a great lesson for everyone. It's good to apply, it's good to not get in sometimes. And what you learn from that is in this business, there's a lot of gigs you're not going to get. You need to be able to move forward and just keep, it can't destroy you every time you don't get a job. So it's really helps to build your resilience.
Yeah.
And this is a great teaching thing to just learn as you go through these applications. First of all, you're learning how to present yourself, which is really important. I mean, that's one of the most important things that you can ever have as a skill is knowing when you walk in a room how to present yourself, how to talk about your music, how to, encourage people to be interested in you because you're confident and you're humble and confident at the same time. And, and just a person that is easy to be around because that's
I
part of what
can
makes a great
Yeah,
team. Yeah, go
just to
ahead.
pick up on what Miriam just said, I heard this, somebody once said this and it made a big impression on me. It said, success is being able to move from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm.
Yeah,
Ah, boy, am I
beautiful.
successful.
I want to add just like as a broader maybe conversation for another time, but just a broader thought for this whole industry and especially as women or minorities in this industry is I really think we have to stop thinking of everybody else as our direct competition. And we have to stop thinking as everybody else's win as our loss. You know, if you didn't get into a program and your friend did, that's still a win for you. Um, it's really, it
It,
doesn't do anyone good to be just like hating when other people get stuff, I guess. Yeah.
but the thing is, okay, I'm here to tell you guys, there were no things to apply to when I was starting out. There were no programs that I could use to advance myself. You guys are so lucky. There's so many opportunities to network and to become part of the industry. And just the number of women that are around. I mean, honestly, Lolita and Laura and I used to look across the room, like, who is she? She must be a songwriter. Or somebody's wife. So the opportunities out there are tremendous, and you do have a certain leg up by being women composers now. There was a time when it worked against you. Right now, I think it's working in favor for the most part. Don't you think, you guys? I mean,
I
it's
think it
really,
depends on the situation and it depends on like maybe specifically for like applications where people are interested in diversity, then maybe it does work for you. Maybe in a broader sense of the industry, it still works a little bit against you. I think that's a good point though, that like if you look around, you see a lot of women who are your quote unquote competition. That means we've gotten a lot better in the industry and we're making progress in that regards, and that's a good thing. And if you can see everybody's win as your win, I think just that energy is much nicer for you overall than um, being really upset for other people or like because of other people getting something. And you never know also what that opportunity meant for that person. It could be something that they really needed. They could be thinking they're about to give up and then they get something awesome, and that's great. And we should all be happy for them.
yeah. I remember when I was starting out, I just realized that if I was going to get anywhere, I had to be just so undeniable, in my ability to do the job. And so I strived for total excellence in every possible way I could. Excellence in my criteria of what is excellent. Now, not everybody has the same criteria of what's excellent. So that's another thing of becoming your authentic self is learning what really matters to you. And when you come from the place of understanding what really matters to you, like there are jobs that I don't want, because I know this is not going to resonate for me. And I think that if I've learned nothing else in all these years, I've learned that I have to really respect and care for my own creative energy, my own spirit, because being a composer, you have to love what you're doing because otherwise you'd be insane to do it, right? I mean, nobody just does it for no reason. We're all compelled. There's a certain drive that I've recognized in other people that, yeah, that person probably will have a career because they have that drive. And so these are the kinds of things. I mean, a lot of it has to do with your own attitude, and that starts from the first thing you put on an application, the first time you walk in a room with people, and present yourself. So all these things, as you develop your power and strength, it'll serve you well. And I really believe that, there's plenty of work for the people that want to stay in this business a long time. There's going to always be work, whether or not, the industry's changing and it's very challenging financially right now. We don't know where it's all going. It's very difficult. But the one thing is true, people will always want fun new stories. They'll always want, so we just have to kind of figure out where it might be going and just be as good at it as we can. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but it starts with these, this is all these applications and all these programs are a place to practice. And like they used to say at Sundance, I love this. This is one of my favorite things about Sundance. There were so many favorite things, but um, you know, you come here and we hope you fail, because when you fail, it means you're taking chances and getting outside your own comfort zone. So these are your opportunities to develop all these skills that will serve you very well in your careers.
It's good perspective. Thank you all for all of that. There's a lot to think through there. And also this will be on YouTube later if people want to rewatch to come back to certain nuggets of information. There's an audience question that kind of wraps into the next question I wanted to ask about how to pitch for films in development or pre-production. I don't know about the using IMDb Pro thing. I'm not sure about that. Y'all can include that or not if you have insight on that. But my next question was, do you have any advice for composers when they're selecting their pieces on like how to narrow it down? Because I was looking through my library the other day and there's literally hundreds of things to look through. I do have it itemized of like a feeling. That's how I do my music. It's not by genre. I am genreless. I do not want to be put in a genre box. Please don't do it. Mine are all by like the emotion. So I'm curious if y'all have some advice on how to narrow it down, because to me, that is by far the hardest part, is like selecting stuff that's different enough from each other, but also has maybe a same kind of through line to showcase who you are as a composer. Sorry, that's a really wordy question.
Yeah, you raise a really important point. I think there's a kind of pendulum between showing that you can do a lot of different things and then losing who you are in the process. If there's one of these, there's a How to Train Your Dragon type cue, followed by the Samuel Barber Adagio for strings type cue, followed by the comedy cue, and then at the end of the day, the people listening don't know who you are if you can do um so I but on the other hand, it depends what you're applying for. If it's a general reel, then yeah, I think you do want to have a range of stuff. But if it's for a specific film, then you do well to figure out what they're looking for that film and try to really hone it for that. In fact, they sometimes get freaked out if they hear something that's not, you know, what they're looking for. You can never second guess what they're looking for. So
That's
you just have to. Another thing I found useful occasionally is to have a friend listen to uh, your demo, because they might say, look, I think that one should be at the top rather than that one. You don't need this one because you've already done that with the other one, and that's better. And they're not as emotionally tied to the material as you are. So I think that's very helpful with a colleague or a friend to have them listen to your demos and make suggestions.
This is just a quick nugget of info on a similar note is since we're all film composers and a lot of film music is kind of boring to listen to without picture, I think a good idea is to try and keep your more thematic and melodic material in your reels and anything you're showing, rather than sometimes you'll just get a really like a cue that's probably amazing in context with dialogue or something, but maybe not so interesting to listen to just on its own in a playlist. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the other thing that I really noticed when I was doing the jurying was there's a lot of music out there, and this is again something that I think is kind of a trick for us, is a lot of film music is similar. That's like sometimes the game. I wish it wasn't, but sometimes that's what the client wants, and what the client wants, that's what they get. So sometimes it's not that interesting. And maybe those pieces, even if you think they're the most right or the most film music-y or the most what sounds like film music is supposed to sound, maybe that's not the best decision, and you should go with what feels like your heart is in it and what feels like represents you as a person and an artist, because that is ultimately more interesting and you're going to stand out a lot more than just hearing a piece of music that sounds perfectly produced, but also sounds like it could be from anything.
Yeah. You know, I don't know how many of you have ever played in bands, but I did that for a long time before I was composing. And I used to make set lists all the time. And, you kind of, when you make a set list, you kind of try to tell a story almost. It's like a narrative, which is probably what made me resonate with film composing so much. Like, how do you want to start? Well, let's knock them dead and, get them to love me. And now I can sort of do something else, and have pacing so that it's not just one thing after another that's all samey and sounds like it could have been anybody. Like AI could definitely do that kind of stuff, so so you want to also I kind of approach it like a set list, although I have to tell you, in my experience when I was very young and starting out, not very young but starting out, everybody told me, Miriam, when you turn in a reel to somebody, just, just 10 seconds of each song, of each cue, and maybe have four cues, so 40 seconds of music. And I realized if this is we're writing music for film, it's a story. So what kind of a story can you tell? I mean, you can tell, like there's commercials and there's all kinds of very short formats. So you want to be able to tell some kind of story during the time you're playing. So I actually, when CDs came out, yes, that's how long ago, I was turning in cassette reels for a long time before CDs happened. But I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to fill the whole thing up, 75 minutes, and I'm going to give it to them and they can just like zoom through it. It doesn't matter. They don't have to listen to everything, but I'm not going to sell myself short, because I felt like, how can they want to hire someone to write a film score, which is a long form musical piece, and how can they tell anything from such a short thing? And then on the other hand, if they think they can know who I am and what I can do from, 1 minute of music, then maybe I don't want to work with them because maybe they're not very process oriented. You know what I mean? If so, there's that. And then, for instance, also, if you just put too many glamorous, dynamic, big pieces all together, it doesn't show that you know how to score. It shows that you can write an orchestral piece, but you don't know how to score and conform to a narrative and under dialogue. I happen to work in documentaries, so that if I turned in those kind of reels, they would, they'd be scared away because they go, well, she doesn't know how to score under dialogue or create beds, So you can't second guess like everybody keeps saying, but all you can do is tell a story, present an authentic view of what you're able to do. And it might change day to day, just like my set lists. Oh, one day I'd start with this and do that, and then I'd get on stage and I'd read the audience and I'd realize, oh, I really want to put these in a different order. I don't think they're ready for this one yet. So I would just call out different tunes to the band. And I think we can't do that, but we have to do the best how we feel that day. That's what I also think. Sometimes when I'm recording, I get all scared. I still get scared with the red light because I feel like, oh my God, this is it. Or the mix, even the mix, oh my God, this is it. All the work I've done for the last 6 months or whatever is going to boil down to this mix. Well, I can only mix it the way it's feeling today. Tomorrow I could have made the guitar louder or quieter, or you know what I mean? But today, this is the best mix I can do. And so you have to learn to live with it. But over time, you'll see that when you look back and listen to the old stuff, like I go back and listen to my oldest stuff and I'm like amazed. Like I didn't think it was that good at the time, but now I look back and I go, wow, I just followed my instincts and I got it right, for those days to the best of the sound quality and stuff. So when you're doing these things, you have to just say, how do I feel today? I'm in this mood. Have you ever been in a situation like you might do something like if you're in a band, one day we played this tune really fast and happy. And another day, everybody's feeling kind of bluesy, so we play it kind of slow and bluesy. And that's the beauty of music, it's so expressive. So find how if you listen back to your reel and it hits you and you go, wow, that's kind of cool, or maybe I should move this around, just go by your feelings that day, but at least it's authentic. So,
Yeah, that's great stuff. Well, I have another question, sort of regarding like, or maybe it's like a pondering that I have, and then we can all discuss it. I've been thinking something I've been doing lately for my own stuff is categorizing all my music so that when I do get a call to make a pitch or I decide I want to do an application for something, I have stuff labeled, I have stuff prepared so I don't have to like sort through and do all this. But then something I thought of today as I was preparing questions was I wonder for new composers if it's valuable to like maybe hire a great mixer to do like 5 tracks for you so that when you have a high something you really want to get, you have 5 or I don't know, a couple tracks that sound great, are a good representation of yourself. Do y'all think, panelists, that that would be a worthy investment, or do you think that would be, I see Damon chimed in. Damon is the best. Little what's it called? Plug for Damon. I just got to watch him work at Fox recently on Family Guy, and I was mesmerized. It was so fun and great, and one of the best sessions I've ever been to, just because the vibe was so wonderful. So everyone was so nice. I've never been to a session where me, just some rando, showed up and people were like happy I was there. So that was a really positive, healing experience. But yeah, what do y'all think about the question about having a mixer
I'm
do
going to
some?
speak just like super specifically to our members, just because I know that that's what I have juried in the past. But the quality of work in our membership is really incredible. Like there were really no duds. um, Everybody's work was really amazing. And I think if you have the skill to mix, go for it. And if you don't, you feel comfortable hiring somebody, maybe do that. But number one advice I would have is just make sure everything is, and I'm so bad at this too, so I'm speaking to myself, making sure everything's leveled out. Because I know I have a lot of music that's crazy dynamic that maybe I've mixed like pop mixing and it's the master's just way too loud. And then other stuff is maybe more narrative and everything's a lot more dynamic and quiet. So taking that extra time to put all of those in the same DAW session and make sure that one of them isn't blasting people in the ears would be really good.
But you know, I have to say, all this great production, which has been placed in everyone's hands, and I was around before it was available that way, you know, so having it was such an amazing thing when all of a sudden we had all this production, these production tools that were affordable. But the truth is, I'm looking for composition. I'm looking for content in the music. And if it's just a piano playing, but there's a great composition, then that shows me that this person is actually a composer, like, you know, instead of a producer. Like a producer can make a great track. Maybe you're a good composer and a good producer, which is kind of what we have to be. But I'm really looking for content in the music. Just like I'm always looking for authenticity, like actual content. Can this person actually write music? You know, is there any kind of a narrative in this music? You know, so, you know, don't get carried away. I guess that's what I'm saying. Wow, that sure shut everybody up.
No, I think that's good. Like story is king, basically, in film
Yeah,
music.
yeah. Story is king or queen.
Yeah, supreme ruler. Just kidding. Peter, did you have anything on that topic, or should I go to the next question?
Um, yeah, I think if you can get, if you're not a great mixer, I think, yeah, get somebody to mix your stuff because you want everything to sound, as I said earlier, everything should sound top of the line. So I do recommend that.
You know, though, I just want to say one thing. I don't know. Um, I don't know how many of you have ever listened to old records from the 60s and before, but you know, it's so interesting. I remember going back and listening to some Mary Wells, she was a soul singer in the 60s. And it was like the horns were out of tune. The singer was out of tune. There were glitches in the groove, but those records were great. And I'm not here to say that you shouldn't strive to make your music great, but perfect, maybe not perfect. You know, music is, humans aren't perfect. Music isn't really perfect. And when it is, it sounds slick. And maybe it doesn't sound like, you know, it has any gravitas. I don't know. So I'm just saying, I personally don't care that much about slick production.
The more
you
we
know?
get into this AI world, the more I'm just like, give me a typo.
Yeah.
Give me a misbeat. I don't know.
Give me an old toothless guy with three strings on his guitar, but what he's singing is incredible, you know.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, there's some comments. Okay. Professional mixed consultation. Yeah, Melissa, that's a really nice idea. Zoe and I will keep that in mind for our next board meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So then my next question is, what are some traits, like, or maybe adjectives that resonate with the three of you panelists when you're listening to an application? I know it's specific to the person and to the program, but I'm curious, like, what surprises you on an application, or what kind of things give you like a little, oh, and this is obviously a deeply personal question, and so it might not be that useful to everyone, but I'm curious.
I just finished a workshop and you know, and it's an international one, so it's kind of different in Europe. Like the composers there aren't so stressed out about some of these things. You know, they work on smaller budgets, they're more indie oriented. And so I'm finding that they're not feeling all this pressure to be the next John Williams, to be the next, you know, whatever, Chris Leonard or whoever. And so it's really interesting. Oh God, I lost my train of thought. Wait, what was the question? Shut.
It was, what are some adjectives or like
Oh,
some little things on an application that make you go, oh, yeah.
yeah. So like there was this one application. It was a very young guy. And he had written a lot of music for concert band. He had never even written anything for a film. But there was something in his music that was kind of quirky and unique. And, you know, we don't need another John Williams. We have John Williams, and there will never be another John Williams. What we need is another somebody that can resonate with films and filmmakers and audiences. And so, you know, he had this quirky style. And so we brought him in, and it was a little bit of a stretch because he had to be he had to learn to understand that he was collaborating with a filmmaker. And so it wasn't just about him doing his thing, but it was just that he had such a talent for this it was like very unusual music because where he was coming from was very different than most of the people who apply for these programs. So anyway, I just think I'm always like, you know, if there's something, we call it a voice, you know, somebody has a voice. It's like they can have different pieces, but you can hear them in everything. So, and I think that in our juries, a lot of times that word comes up, a voice. Does this person have any kind of new voice, individual voice that you recognize that they might actually contribute something that's additive to film scoring, as opposed to just going, well, he can do John Williams and he can do Danny Elfman. Okay, you know, I'm not, you know, we're not looking for any of that. Those people already exist, you know. So yeah, so that's what we're always looking for, that unique voice, because then when like I, you know, there's a thing, a lot of songwriters become composers, film composers. And I think that's because they gravitate towards it naturally because they're storytellers. And so what's more important, the musical storyteller part, the person that really wants to tell a story with their music and be part of a larger story, or the person who's like gone to a traditional music education and they've learned all the masters and they've learned how to orchestrate, and they go to Berkeley and they learn how to create these incredible recordings, you know, and then they show up with a filmmaker and they don't have a clue how to tell a story. They're just busy. They've learned all these skills. So, you know, I sort of feel like the songwriter who doesn't know anything except how to write songs, and they maybe they learned how to record by doing demos. That's how I learned how to record, just by doing song demos. And so then they don't know a lot of this other stuff, but in some ways it sets them free because they don't have to unlearn traditionals formats for writing music. You know, it's just a very interesting thing. So I'm often, you know, open, if their production skills aren't as far along, you know, a good composer knows how to get that stuff done with a crew if they need to. You see what I mean? So what's the priority? So I consider that super important part of becoming a good film composer is that you're really into telling stories with music. I mean, I'm not saying you have to be a songwriter, but I'm just saying that they might not have the other skill sets yet.
Totally. I mean, I'm totally on the same page with you with that. I would say for me, what was standing out a lot on people's written statements was when people were representative of who they are and talking about their influences, and like when you got a sense of their background and why, like when there was a passion in their music and their storytelling, I feel like that was so much more interesting for me to read about than a lot of people who did what I think is the most, like, what, when you're writing about yourself for an application, I think we all think first like, oh, I got to put all my impressive stuff down on paper, like a bullet point. But in reality, I found that like extremely uninteresting to read. And I found the like actual why you write music, finding it interesting, like what your background is. I thought that was so much more interesting to read about and to hear about how people connected to what they're doing, especially when you get to then listen to their music. And if you can hear what they wrote in their, you know, if that connects like the same person, I feel like that was way more interesting to read than you could have the highest accolade in the world, but if you're just putting those, it's kind of boring. I don't know.
Well, not just boring. I think it's just shows that you think there's a formula for doing this, you know?
Yeah, or also like sometimes, I mean, I think we're stuck sometimes as film composers because on one hand, sometimes people you're pitching your music to for a film, like maybe they do really care about that stuff, but for other things, like I just don't think it makes sense to don't let those overshine or put too much importance on that, because who you are and being authentic to yourself and really representing why you write music, I think is just ultimately way more important than any awards you've won, you know?
Yeah. You know, that kind of leads me to this whole other thing, which is that to be a film composer, you have to really be driven. I mean, nobody in their right mind would choose this as a lifestyle because of the hours, because how competitive it is. It's a really, really hard way to go. You know, if you just love music, you can sit at home and play piano after work every day. But to do this job, so I'm also looking for a certain, is that drive there? And I can recognize it in people because I know how I am. And it's kind of, you know, they're not going to have a career unless they have this drive. There's just no way around it. You've got to have this drive. Otherwise, it'll be a part-time thing or whatever, you know. But if you wake up in the morning, and all these people that come through my workshops, they're like that. They wake up in the morning and they can't wait to get in the studio. They just can't wait to do their, you know, oh, I got notes. Okay, now I'm going to go work on the notes. I mean, it's not like it's always fun, but there's a drive. And when you can't do it without that drive. So I can sort of tell people who I don't think are going to be able to last very long because it's really hard. You know, you got to have a lot of desire.
Yeah, and you have to have faith, I think, and trust that you have made the right choice. Also, I want to give a 5-minute warning, everybody. 5-minute warning. We have 5 minutes left, so we'll get a couple of last thoughts in here and there. Peter, did you have anything you wanted to say about that particular topic?
I think it has been said.
Okay. Great. Well, are there any last audience questions in our last few minutes? Anything anyone wants to specifically ask before we wrap?
Maria has one.
I have a small question. Well, thank you so much for such valuable information. It's just like application related. Do you prefer video examples or just the music? And we also have to submit a CV. So maybe if you can tell a little bit, what do you expect in the CV? What is the best way to organize everything for the CV? Thank you.
Anybody in particular you want to ask? Like, you know, I just had coffee, so I apologize. I'm just.
Sorry, that was a really vivacious laugh, but that.
I feel like I will talk forever if people don't like tell me to stop. So
Me too.
Every time I do a Zoom, I have to consciously be like, let other people talk now.
I mean, I think seeing stuff to picture is really, really valuable. We don't have it on some of mine, but I wouldn't mind if somebody wants to put it, because I think that's the ultimate. You know, how did their music work with the picture? You know, now we get to see. And so I think that's excellent. If, you know, you can always ask them if they will, you know, they may have rules about how much material they'll accept, you know, so it's good to ask. And then as far as the CD, so did you say
I meant
CD?
CV.
Like a
CV.
resume.
I think,
Oh,
yeah,
a CV.
I think my questions were specifically for the application, the C.
Oh, I mean, I think it's great if you have a CV. It makes it easy to look down the list really quickly and go, oh, okay. No, no, no. Oh, wow. Okay. You know,
Maybe a CV is a good place to put all the, you know, accolades or whatever.
yeah.
And then your statements is a good place to put your heart.
Yeah, you can have a section. I have a section for like programs and stuff I've done that's separate from my credits. And I put that sort of at the end. And that seems to work well because people learn about me first. And then that's like a little addendum at the end to be like, and also I'm pretty good at applying for stuff, I guess. Or like I've applied so many times. Eventually something will happen, I think.
Well, no, you know what it shows?
It
shows your drive. You're just taking every opportunity you find and trying to, you know, utilize it, which shows me you're highly motivated.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Something will work out eventually for all of you, I think.
Yeah.
I think the CV is important. And it kind of depends on what you're applying for, how you order the CV. But you know, you clearly one always wants to see a list of credits, um, programs that you've been in, awards that you've won, who you've worked with, and depending on the thing you're applying for, where you went to school and what your training, previous experience. You know, I think people want to know the full range of your previous experience. So that's important. As far as whether to have, obviously two picture is better if you know if you have that. But if you have really strong music that isn't to picture, I always listen to that and when I'm judging, and I listen just as you know it means just as much. So don't not include something just because it's a piece that you have from whatever thing you did in the past that if it's music's really strong, I would submit it. One thing, and I don't know if I'm sort of thinking out loud here, but is sometimes people submit stuff and the music's really good, but the film is how shall we say subpar. Like the acting isn't good, or the writing, whatever it is. There's a lot of that, and it's we always tell people don't be influenced by that, but it's hard not to be. Um, that's just a fact. So, um, if the movie's really bad, maybe
Don't,
just
yeah.
submit the music,
Yeah.
because you just don't know how scrupulous people can be, or just how capable they are of separating those things out. So uh, I don't have a problem with stuff being not to picture. Although, you know, the
Yeah.
other side of the coin, it really does help if you're doing something really well to picture, if you really capture the mood of something, or you make a shift just at the right time, that tells us a lot. So try to include picture, but don't let it prevent you from sending music that's strong.
Yeah, I mean, I spent the first 10 years of my career I never sent picture because everything was so awful that I worked on, you know, and honestly, I was embarrassed of it, but I was really proud of the music. So yeah, you should make that judgment call. You know, maybe send your strongest picture that you have and then some music, you know, because don't send a picture that's really, really bad though.
I think that's really good advice. And I want to make sure we end on time because I know Peter has to run. Few last things I want to say. Well, actually, I have a
Can I just add
synopsis
something
I
super
think.
quick?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I just want to, because I've been thinking about on the video versus audio question, do what the application says. Because they've said how they would like to view something. So do what they say, how they say it. If they say video or audio, then obviously do whatever you want. But if they ask for audio, give them audio. If they ask for video, give them video. And if they ask for audio or video, give them a link to a playlist. So you'd be surprised how many people had incredible music, but it was so hard because they'd be like, okay, go to my website, pick on track 3, and then here's my Spotify. So I want you to go on Spotify and then click on.
Oh, yeah, don't.
And you need to make it easy for people to hear your music. Just make everything easy and also just follow the instructions.
Yeah.
But
That's
you know,
great.
that brings up something interesting. I mean, if you have like a playlist that has your favorite stuff on it, you can, in some ways, I would, you know, if I really got interested in someone, then I would want to hear more stuff, you know. But of course, then again, that's always a risk because the more stuff that you chose, yeah. So I think you're right, Zoe. I'm gonna shut up.
No, this has been so great. It's always tough to be concise in this because everyone has such a wealth of experience. But I just want to thank specifically my 3 panelists, Miriam, Peter, and Zoe, for coming on today. It means a lot to me. I run these completely volunteer, but like it's volunteer time. So when people come on and show up, it means a lot to me personally. Thank you everyone who came because without these, you're just talking to a void and it's extremely meaningless. So thank you for coming. And my last thought is there's a bizarre alchemy to what makes your stuff get out there in the world. But I think at least my take is think about who you are. And that's the most important thing you can offer because you can't possibly know what anyone's looking for, even when you're pitching for films. So just put yourself out there and people respond to authenticity because what's the frickin' point otherwise? So thank you all. Thank you all. It's going to be on YouTube. And thank you, Alexa, for running tech. Thank you very much. And I hope you all have a really good day.
Yay. Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, friends.